You know, some stories you hear, you think, no way that's real. Well, this isn't a myth, it's not a legend. This is the documented, true story of a reign of terror that unfolded over 100 years ago, when two predators brought an entire empire to its knees. Let's get into the incredible story of the Man-Eaters of Tsavo.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1898. We're in East Africa, and one of the most ambitious engineering projects of the time is kicking off, the Uganda Railway. The goal? To lay hundreds of miles of steel track right across the wild, rugged terrain of Kenya. This thing was a massive symbol of industrial power, and it took thousands of workers, a lot of them brought over from India, to even attempt it.
Now, they were ready for all sorts of problems. Swamps, rivers, disease. They had plans for all of that. But as the railway pushed further and further inland, the whole operation, it just stopped, ground to a complete halt. So you have to ask, right? What in the world could be powerful enough to stop a project this huge? It wasn't bad engineering. It wasn't a lack of supplies. Nope, it was something else. Something way more primal. You see, the terror that fell on those railway camps wasn't human at all. It was something that came out of the landscape itself. A pair of predators that would go down in history as maybe the most feared man-eaters of all time. So the railway line eventually makes its way to the Tsavo River, and this is where things had to slow down. They had to build a huge bridge, which meant setting up camps, just canvas tents really, spread out all over the plains. And none of them had any idea what was watching them from the tall grass. And that is when it started. Suddenly, night after night, the quiet was just shattered. The historical accounts put it so simply and so chillingly. The African nights were filled with screams. A horrific pattern started to emerge, and it was terrifyingly systematic. Every single morning, another worker's bed was empty. Men were literally being snatched from their tents as they slept, dragged out into the pitch black night. I mean, think about it. There were no walls, no locks, just a thin sheet of canvas between them and whatever was out there. The attacks were so brutal and so weirdly intelligent that honestly you can't blame people for thinking something supernatural was going on. The local people were absolutely convinced these were not normal lions. They thought they were devils, evil spirits that had possessed the bodies of these animals. And of course, predators this terrifying, they get names. The workers started calling them the ghost because of its phantom-like ability to just appear and disappear, and the darkness for its role in the nightly horror. Together, they weren't just hunting, they were ruling, holding thousands of men hostage with sheer terror. With the whole project about to collapse, and his workers completely paralyzed with fear, the job of stopping the killing spree fell to one man. And here's the kicker. He wasn't a professional big game hunter. He wasn't a soldier. He was the guy in charge of building the bridge. That man was Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson. He showed up in Tsavo on March 1st, 1898, with blueprints and a job to do: build a bridge. He was an engineer, a man of logic and numbers, who was about to be thrown into a desperate fight for survival that he absolutely did not sign up for.
At first, Patterson didn't know what to think about the disappearances. Were men just running off? Was there a murderer in the camp? He had no idea until he started looking for himself. And that's when he found it. Huge paw prints in the sand, and a chilling trail of blood that just vanished into the bush.
He followed that trail, and what he found? Well, it confirmed the absolute worst fears of everyone there. A quote from his own book is pretty graphic, but you need to hear it to understand the horror. He described finding a body where the flesh had been sucked dry. He knew then, without a doubt, what they were dealing with.
Okay, so Patterson knows what he's up against, but knowing your enemy and actually defeating that enemy, totally different ballgame. The engineer now had to become a hunter, and he had to stalk two of the most cunning predators the world has ever seen. Patterson figured out really fast just how smart these lions were. For his first hunt, he sets up this whole trap. He climbs a tree near a victim's tent and just waits all night, shotgun ready. Around midnight, he hears them. A twig snaps, a low growl, but they never show. Then, at dawn, a scream rips through the air from a totally different camp. The lions had just gone somewhere else. They'd completely outsmarted him. And get this whole nightmare didn't last for a few days or a few weeks. The terror and the hunt went on for nearly a full year. Can you even imagine that? Almost 365 nights of knowing that you or the guy sleeping right next to you could be next.
The workers built thorn fences, lit huge fires, but the lions just learned to get around them. The psychological toll must have been insane.
So after almost a year of this constant terror, the inevitable happened. The men just flat out refused to work. They were too scared to even leave their tents. Construction on the bridge stopped completely. The great Ugandan Railway, this massive project of the British Empire, was being beaten by 2 lions. Now, Patterson's relentless hunt for the ghost in the darkness was eventually successful, and he wrote down the whole crazy, harrowing experience in his book, The Man-Eaters of Tsavo. And it has gone on to become one of the greatest, most unbelievable true survival stories ever told. And really, it leaves us with this big question to chew on. The story of Tsavo is so much more than just a horror story. It's this stark reminder of what happens when our human ambitions slam right up against the untamable forces of the natural world. It makes you ask, what really happens when the march of progress runs headfirst into the raw, unapologetic power of nature?